Welcome back, everybody. My name again is Mary Steltello. I use she, her pronouns, and I am with Vista Global in Be Local, Wisconsin. We are moving into our third pillar of the B Lab and B Corp movement theory of change, stakeholder economy. And our next session, Unpacking the Magic Behind B Corp Governance. This session showcases examples of actions that each business has taken to create good stakeholder governance structures within their organizations with a focus on actions tied to worker, including employee engagement, health volunteerism, and recruitment. And I am excited to welcome the moderator of this panel, Tim Frick, who has many roles here today. He's president and founder of Mightybytes and a member of Be Local Illinois. He'll be moderating this panel. Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Mary. Appreciate it. And I want to be very cognizant of the fact that we are well into our third hour of 4 hours of content today. And so everybody shake their hands out and give us your best jazz hands. And if you're in the audience listening, please be liberal with your questions and, just making sure that we're all engaged in this, because we're going to be talking about governance, which I like to call the unsung, unsexy hero of stakeholder business practices. A lot of people kind of look at like policies and practices and stuff as kind of the boring stuff, but it's actually the glue that holds all of this B Corp stuff together. So today we're going to be talking about what that glue looks like and how it works for several different companies. So I'm going to introduce each of our panelists, or actually allow them to introduce themselves, starting with John Bishop. Go ahead and introduce yourself, John.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Bishop. I'm the founder and CEO of Envest Microfinance. We're a microfinance investment vehicle located in Madison, Wisconsin. We collect investments from social investors here in the U.S., and we lend to microfinance institutions in developing countries that in turn lend to very low-income folks with inadequate access to credit, often but not exclusively for an entrepreneurial purpose. I founded Envest in 2006 on the principle that widespread poverty is an existential threat to an environmentally sustainable economy. And when people can't meet their basic needs, they don't have the luxury to take into account the threats to the environment. And so I say access to credit as one of a broad suite of aspects, parameters that need to be available to low-income folks worldwide. So we've heard some wonderful talks about some of the initiatives people have going in the U.S. today. I've been really inspired by it. We're trying to apply some of these internationally. And so we work with microfinance institutions in 11 countries that are providing credit to low-income folks on the far side of the world. So I look forward to our conversation here today.
Awesome. Thanks very much, John. Kate, Meliora, one of my favorite Chicago B Corps. I'm going to share a link in the chat. And why don't you introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Kate Jakubas. I'm the founder of Meliora Cleaning Products. Meliora is a Latin word that means better. So if you know the English word ameliorate, to make something better, that Latin word's right in the middle, Meliora. So that's where our name comes from. We make things like household cleaning products. So like here's our bottle, a bottle of household all-purpose cleaner. Really, really simple ingredients. This is a glass bottle. It is a plastic sprayer. This is a multi-use product. So you buy an empty bottle with some of these tablets in it. That's one of our products, just to kind of give you an idea. These are things you use to clean your home. We are a 9.5-year-old business. We've been certified as a B Corp for about 7 years, I think. We really, we're a CPG company. We manufacture and design our own products. We're based here in Chicago. We've got a living wage factory. So I'm really excited to talk about, how we engage with the workers as stakeholders today. having those frontline employees and people that work in our facility. We have a total of 12 employees. We distribute our products both through online channels and brick and mortar stores. We're in about 250 brick and mortar stores across the U.S. And of course, you can find Meliora products online, meliorameansbetter.com. I think Tim, already dropped that. So really excited to be here today.
Thanks, Kate. Hi,
and I will apologize because I'm in a working factory. So if there's a little background noise, that's why.
Good.
And all that good, authentic noise in here.
Hey, thanks, Kate. Hi, Ben. Why don't you talk a little bit about Walker Miller Energy and what you do there?
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ben Dueweke. I'm the Director of Community Partnerships with Walker Miller Energy Services. We are a woman and Black-owned energy efficiency company. We are a energy efficiency program developer and implementer. And technically what that means is we work a lot with utilities to design programs that allow them to reduce their energy use by offering customers, both residential and commercial, though we work primarily with residential, energy savings resources of all kinds. But in a deeper reason, why we do that is because our particular focus is working with lower income families and communities of color, disadvantaged and environmental justice communities, because there is such a big problem with utility burden, energy burden. It prevents families from being able to buy basic products. Food, having decided between food and energy is a decision that too many families really have to make. So we are focused first and foremost at tackling energy efficiency, but as a Black and woman-owned business, it has allowed us to diversify into so many other areas, which I hope we'll get a chance to talk a little bit more about today.
Awesome. Thanks very much. I really appreciate you all being here. Emmanuel, if you could advance to the next slide, please. The B impact assessment, which we've all used to certify our companies, they break down company stakeholders as workers, environment, community, and customers. And so I'm just going to ask each one of you to talk a little bit about how you serve those stakeholders and what you do for them. So Kate, you want to start?
Absolutely. So Meliora is an environment first business. And by that, I mean, when I first came up with the idea, my literal thought was, let's make the best cleaning product business for the environment. So from day one, we've looked at the impact of our ingredients and products on the surrounding environment. My master's degree is in environmental engineering, in fact, in wastewater management. So that's literally where it was like, what kind of laundry product can I put in a washing machine that isn't going to affect the good people in St. Louis, Missouri, who are also our Midwestern neighbors here? So thinking about how pollutants, how different products and different chemicals flow in our natural environment was the whole original purpose behind Meliora. So environment is kind of our number one stakeholder, and that was the founding behind the company. So definitely, it's designing products that have that lower impact on the environment. That's how we, engage that stakeholder and by creating those products. What we found, over time as we really got started was that customers, those pesky customers that we need to keep the doors open, they were actually a secondary stakeholder. We weren't really thinking about them on day one. But we'd go up to people and say like, oh, you have to buy this product because it's better for the environment. And like, it turns out that it's easier to sell someone on a product when it's better for them. And so about a year after we founded, we didn't change anything about the products we were making at all. All we did was change the messaging around what ingredients do to people instead of what ingredients do to fish. And like, it turns out people get a little bit more engaged with that and can identify, a little bit more closely with those impacts of things like if you've got kids with asthma, allergies, if you've got pets, if you yourself have, sensitivity. So, customers are definitely kind of another stakeholder where we are making the choices that people would want to make for themselves if they could sort of ideally invent products to bring into their home that are safer. Those are the choices that we're making so that those products are available. We hear all the time that the frustration is, people want to do better. They want to buy plastic-free products. They want to use non-toxic cleaners, but they're just not available, quote unquote. So we're trying, the better we do as a company, the more available those products are to people that are looking for them. So that's, how we look out for customers as a stakeholder, is making those products. And then as we grow as a company and added workers, that was a natural next stakeholder to bring on. We want to be a good place to work, but, selfishly, I work here. I want to be a great place to work, but, you really can't have a sustainable business in a financial sense without being a great place for your workers. And so we've done more formal stakeholder engagement work with our workers probably than anything else, because it's not necessarily a core to the founding of the company. So we maybe had to make a little bit of a more formal effort to do that process. And so we've done some great work in the last year or so on workers.
That's great. Yeah. And it's a really good, that's a really good important part, that it's a journey. And I know the first time we took the B impact assessment, we, similar to Meliora, were very focused on environment, and we were like, we're a green company. Awesome. And then you do the BIA for the first time and you're like, oh, I guess there's a few things we need to focus on here.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Kate. Ben, you want to share same answer?
Yeah. Staring at these, I love this slide. Also, I think it's just the green that's captivating, but, I'm looking at them. I'm trying to figure out where I want to start, because as a company that is involved in the clean energy transition that is really just getting going in earnest right now, though it's really been going for some time, it's incredible how all of these stakeholders are swirling around all the time. I think environment is at the heart of a lot of what we do, as is the community and community and customer. In that, at our core, our business is decarbonizing the world through energy efficiency. We're reducing energy waste, and therefore we're helping that journey. But we're doing it by engaging people, and the nature of especially residential energy efficiency is so distributed, and it's so ubiquitous that our customer base is everybody. And it feels like an overstatement to say that, but it's really not. The industry at large, energy efficiency's customer base is everybody, because we are all using energy in our everyday lives. And so we're constantly engaging folks. Now that becomes a really big elephant to take a bite of. So I think we were able to hone in, again, based somewhat in our ownership and our leadership, and focus in and be really intentional about serving communities that are often left out of these types of programs, and out of resources in general so often. And so we do make a point to engage our customers in, like I said, Black and brown communities, in communities of diverse ethnic backgrounds, rural communities, urban communities. We are very intentional. I mean, we work both, we're headquartered in Detroit, Michigan, but we also do a lot of work in middle and southern Illinois, and those are two very different places. And so by engaging our communities, in order to engage those communities effectively, our workers have to be engaged in the work they do. And therefore, we make really intentional efforts to hire our teams in order to make sure they are looking like those communities. So you're immediately building trust. And it allows us to do our work a lot better. And again, that's community and customers. I guess really I'm talking about customers, but again, at energy efficiency, and this is my final bid to tie all three of these things together in one statement. But by serving those customers, it really is everybody, and you are really uplifting communities. Literally, that is the mission, is empowering people and enriching communities through clean energy. So I really think we're hitting on all fronts.
That's awesome. Thanks, Ben. John, same question. You want to talk a little bit about what Envest does for stakeholders?
Of course. I think, like both Kate and Ben, and also like everybody on the previous two panels, I think all of our stakeholders are the earth and everybody on the planet. In our case, the stakeholders are, the first and foremost is low-income folks in developing countries, and really by extension, the earth, because their needs can either be met by damaging the earth or not. And so by taking care of their basic needs, we allow them, we empower them to be able to take a more sustainable pathway. Our mission statement actually involves bridging the gap between microfinance and capital markets. So there are two obvious sets of stakeholders right there. You got the low-income borrowers on one end and the investors on the other side. And so we've got investors providing capital that give economic opportunity to low-income folks, and you can serve them both. It's not a zero-sum game. And I think Ben and Kate would find that in their businesses, and so would our colleagues in the previous panel. The other obvious set of stakeholders is the team. I've got a wonderful team. I work with great folks. We have 5 people here in the U.S. We've got a full-time representative in Uganda and a part-time representative in Nicaragua, and they're part of they're very crucial stakeholders because they're what makes it happen. They make all this governance that Tim introduced possible.
Great. Thanks so much. Emmanuel, could you please advance to the next slide? I want to talk a little bit about what your desired outcomes are around this. So when you go through the B impact assessment, a lot of times they're asking you about creating a theory of change and actually, moving from beyond just increasing sales to actually, figuring out how you measurably reduce poverty, for instance, or something like that. So just want to, ask each of you if you have gone this route and if you are thinking, how to measure what you're doing in terms of stakeholder governance and the desired outcomes from that. Ben, do you want to take this one first?
Yeah, sure. So something like 16% of people in this country, in the United States, are afflicted by a utility burden. And what that means is that they're spending 6% or more of their household income on energy or utilities. And that, going back to my introduction, introduces a real challenge in as far as having to make difficult decisions in daily life, having to choose between heat or eat, as we often hear, which is a terrible phrase, but it's true. And 6%, by the way, that is just the low end of what is considered to be an energy burden. We're seeing folks in Detroit who are spending upwards of 30% of their household income on energy, which is really unthinkable. And so, though we are not measuring necessarily the outcomes on a broad basis, just based on Walker Miller, we are certainly looking at those numbers as a sort of guidepost toward our goals and creating a real impact in the communities that we serve. Although, and again, you alluded, Tim, earlier to going through that B impact assessment, saying, boy, we got some work to do. We thought we were doing well. I think I hope to dig in a little bit more. By the way, I should have said Walker Miller was a really new B Corp. We were certified just this April. So we're still kind of trying it on for size and getting everything fielded out. And so, like I said, I hope to be able to dig a little bit more into the governance and other sections of B Corp to try and look for examples on how we might be able to measure our impact based on some of these industry statistics that we use.
Awesome. Thank you. Kate, you want to share about any desired outcomes that you put together?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I definitely agree. I talked a little bit about environment. I'm actually going to talk about community and serving this kind of stakeholder group because that's where, our donation commitment, we have a commitment to donate 2% of our top line revenue. A lot of other B Corps or B1s, as we call ourselves, also have a 1% for the planet commitment. And I think that's a little bit of a unique case. The founder of Patagonia founded 1% for the planet, and under the guise of basically giving ourselves almost a social license to operate. Like, by the mere fact that we exist as for-profit businesses, we have an obligation to give back. And that's sort of the core around the 1% commitment. But if we talk about outcomes, really, like, other than, acknowledge that we, have the fortune to be able to conduct for-profit business, we are looking for ways to do something that our business model cannot accomplish. And I'm a sustainability professor, so if you come to my class, I'll talk at you for hours and hours about how for-profit business can make it have outcomes that are better for the planet, and in some ways must, be part of the solution. We really can't do everything we need to do without for-profit business being involved. That being said, there are certainly some things that sort of are outside the model of for-profit business being able to touch, and there's really some outcomes that nonprofits are better suited to tackle. And so for us, the outcome that we're looking for is ways to leverage our for-profit business, set aside, earmark those dollars, and we give them to nonprofits, and we give them specifically to nonprofits that are doing those things that we think are more difficult or impossible for a for-profit business to accomplish. So there are problems that are I think better tackled by a nonprofit model, and so we direct dollars in every case that to try and find and solve those problems.
That's great. Thanks, Kate.
We work a lot with it. I'll try and avoid, I don't want to give specific instances, but I just sounded vague. Like Women's Voices for the Earth is a nonprofit that we donate a lot of commitments to. So I'll just say that as a placeholder.
Awesome. Thank you. John, same question. Have you assessed any metrics that you're using to gauge success in serving some of these stakeholders?
Sure. Our real desired outcome is to enable a universal access to credit worldwide. So the real metric we use is access. Hey, exactly. It's kind of like in organic farming. They look at how many acres came into organic farming. They don't look at biological oxygen demand of the river and silt outflow because that's so difficult. But we can look at access. There are several studies. This is a really slippery number, but they try to look at what is the unmet need for credit worldwide. And the studies come somewhere between $300 and $500 billion in unmet demand. And if you throw housing in there, it goes up into the trillions. And so to give Kate a quick example here, you're not going to raise hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars through bake sales, for government aid, donations. It's got to come from the capital markets. That's the only place I know that is going to come up with that kind of money. There will be other things, say, in the environmental sector. A lot of those will have to be nonprofits, and I participate in a bunch of those, and so I absolutely agree with Kate there. But for credit, we see capital markets as the source for what can do an awful lot of good. So that's really our desired outcome is, once again, our mission statement to bridge the gap between microfinance and capital markets.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and to both your points on that, a stat that I often read is that less than 3% of philanthropic giving goes to environmental causes, and less than 3% of that comes from the business community. So environmental charities have a big road ahead of them, and anything that we can do to help them is a good thing. Emmanuel, next slide, please. Now I'm going to ask a question about specifically around, how do you know from your stakeholders that you're actually making good on your promises and stuff? How do you enlist their perspectives when you're creating products, services, or programs or whatever? And if so, how do you know they're you're getting what you say you're going to do? Kate, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, for a CPG company, we get a little cheat code. It's called, customer feedback. So we, when we're developing a new product, I can recall one of the last launches we had. We literally brought in our customer service person early in the process, and we said, "Here's what we're thinking to do. Like, what are people going to say about it?" And our customer service lead was just so in tune with the voice of the customer, as we call it. But knowing what types of emails we get, what people comment on, what they love, what they hate. That, she really represented the customer voice and said like, "Oh, like people are going to hate this, you might want to redesign. Have you considered this?" So having, luckily for us, it's a positive feedback loop. Like if we make something our customers like, we tend to do better, financially as a result. But yeah, definitely that customer feedback and really knowing who our customer is. We get feedback that we know is not from our customer, depending on the nature of, the post we're putting up or what have you. But knowing who our real customer is, knowing what they're looking for when they buy our product, and then working as hard as we can to meet them. Early days, some companies have the customer personas. Sometimes you make a little avatar and you say, we're going to do this for Irene, and you have a dimension to them. And we've really got a lot of, flesh and blood customers that will let us know what they like, what they don't like. So we have, our customer feedback loops can channel in that particular stakeholder to us. And that's one of the most important ones, because it is the triple bottom line, where if our customers are happy, we can sell more product. Luckily they've always held us accountable. Why did you make us out of plastic? We know you can do better. Okay, we update it. So
hold that thought, because that's my next question. John, how about you?
Yeah, our business model is such that we really can't ignore stakeholder perspectives. We've really got two products. We have a loan product to microfinance institutions, which are the institutions that serve the customers in the borrowers countries, and we've got an investment product for investors. Well, if we don't take our stakeholder perspectives into account, nobody buys our product. So the very design of the product assures it. And we're getting continual feedback, and every time an institution says we don't want a loan from you, we just got some feedback. And when we get so many of those that we can't place loans, we need to change the product. And it's the same on the investing end. And so ours is a case where actually capitalism works pretty well. We get continuous feedback. It either works or it doesn't.
Yeah. All right, great. Thank you. Ben, how about you, Walker Miller?
Yeah. I'll give a kind of macro scale one and then a quick micro scale one. But as we're designing and implementing energy efficiency programs, some of them are quite large, into the tens of thousands of homes a year around the state of Michigan. Some of them are much smaller. We have smaller tranches of money that we partner with community development financial institutions with to spend, for example. But as we're doing that, the smaller programs especially, when we're working with folks in their homes, helping them make decisions about what's next using resources, we're in there making sure that we're not just saying, okay, we're going to insulate your attic, you're going to get a new furnace, we're going to do that. We're really working to educate the customer about their house, let them know, because we know that you have the one place you need to respect somebody above all is their own home. And being in someone's home is a privilege in and of itself. And so making changes, going in there, bringing other folks in there, contractors and other folks that we partner with that are really beholden to us ultimately. We need to make sure that we are working with these customers directly to know that they know why we're there, what we're doing, how it's going to look and act when it's done, and we're working with them every step of the way. So and then that's like a macro scale. A micro scale, we're currently running some workforce development programs to teach folks about building science, get them prepared to do energy auditing jobs that are really going to be needed in the near future with all of these resources coming from the federal government for energy efficiency. And so we've got 10 folks that were underemployed or had other barriers to employment that are in a class, and we're surveying them not too much, as I learned recently, regularly though, to make sure that the information they're receiving is being given to them in a way that's appropriate, and that instruction is good, that they don't have any barriers on a regular basis to their success.
Great, thanks. I'd shift a little bit to talk about accountability. Next slide, please, Emmanuel, if you would. We all have taken the B Impact Assessment as certified B Corps. We hold ourselves accountable at least every 3 years to B Lab when we go through that assessment and recertify. What other things do you do to hold your company accountable and to your stakeholders and stuff? John, do you want to start with that one?
Be delighted. We, again, following the last question, we have a nearly continuous feedback, because we can look at Are we placing loans or aren't we placing loans? And then are we getting some signals that we're having some really good impact? So right now, we've got virtually all of our assets placed with microfinance institutions in countries where it's really needed. We've got it in Uganda and Kenya and Zimbabwe and Tajikistan and several others that are just super necessary. So we have a nearly continuous feedback indicator. If we've got our money out there, and if we have indications that people are getting access to credit who otherwise wouldn't have access to credit, we know we're having the desired impact, and we're super, we call it deployed in our business. We're super deployed right now. We're really happy with that. So that's how we can monitor it. And then we have a board of directors, and they're pretty good at keeping us accountable too. And they it's a super collegial relationship. So boards can be positive and encouraging, and we've got one of those.
That's awesome.
So that's another way that we're kept accountable.
All right, thanks, John. Ben, how about you?
So we're Walker Miller Energy Services is about 175 people right now. That's up from about 15 when I started 10 years ago. And so it's a pretty rapidly growing organization. One of the things that we're needing to be very intentional about is carrying the culture of the organization through to the tendrils that it's marching off to across the Midwest and really throughout the country. So really the company culture here at Walker Miller is quite strong. We're very focused. We're a core values-based organization. And I'm just going to revert to the core values as a way that we're holding ourselves accountable to maintaining the growth, maintaining our company culture while we grow. I think that we're learning ways to survey ourselves and to communicate with ourselves as we grow. But it's hard, right? It's hard for any organization to get bigger and still maintain that feel. Really, as the new B Corp, this was the latest big move in our accountability to ourselves, though. Actually passing the B Impact assessment and becoming a B Corp in and of itself is a way that we're going to be able to really start to hold ourselves accountable. So I know it's a bit of a meta answer there, but I think justified given our new status.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Kate, how about you?
Yeah, in business, there's a phrase that people like to use. It's called barrier to entry, right? Usually it's tossed around with competition. I think some of the commitments we make are more about barriers to exit. Right now, every time we send out a product, it's got a little B Lab logo on it showing that we are a certified company. And maintaining that certification is hard some days. Some days it's really tough to look at the bottom line and still be clicking donations based on the top line. A couple of years we've just had, those are tough years to do that. And if, I think if not for, we maintain a B Corp certification, we maintain a Made Safe certification, which is based on our ingredients. So it's a commitment that every product we make will go through a certain third-party screening process to make sure that the ingredients are safe for people and planet. I think without that commitment, it's easy to say, well, let's just launch this one product, with this ingredient, just to have the numbers, or just to do this, or let's do this year instead. So those commitments that we've had in place kind of create that barrier to exit to hold us to the things that we do really want to do anyway. It's just like some days are harder than others to get the job done. So, people talk about certifications, and they're certainly a burden to them, but that is the number one thing that we get out of them. We talk about community there, which certainly is there for things like B Corp certification, and 1% for the planet as well. But like the fact that once you've said you've done that and you've printed that and it's on your website, it's on your product, you have to do it. You got to follow through.
And that's a really great kind of entry point into my next question, Kate. So I'm going to hold the focus on you. Next slide. Thanks, Emmanuel. You mentioned putting the B Lab logo, the B Corp logo on your products. What other ways do you communicate your commitments? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Nice. To your commitments to your stakeholders, and you mentioned earlier about talking to customers and getting pushback. Can you talk a little bit too about kind of the reception you get around that stuff?
Sure. What we find a lot is that a lot of our new customers find us through our certifications and our partnerships. There's greenwashing. There's a ton of greenwashing in industry in general. There is a ton of greenwashing in the cleaning products industry. As much as when you go online and you're scrolling Instagram and you see, something in a bright green plastic bottle, people are getting better about knowing, and trying to figure out, like, just because it's bright green, like, does that really mean it's good for the environment? I think people are getting better and better about not just trusting what the company says, but trusting what other people are saying. And so one way to communicate is really through third-party certifications, or even other NGOs, the nonprofits that we work with, like Women's Voices for the Earth. They issue sort of brand agnostic position statements, and we can point to them and say, hey, look, like, this health-focused nonprofit says that here's a list of ingredients to avoid. Just so you know, we don't use any of those ingredients, and here are some things you should use. So pointing to really trusted third parties is one way that we try and keep up and demonstrate that we have those commitments, and hearing NGOs, hearing third parties really point to us, saying, those are the best feedback. Pieces of feedback we get is like, hey, like, I've done my homework and you guys are the legitimate green brand. You're not doing this. To us, it's always more valuable. We can talk about ourselves all day, but when someone else talks about us, that's really the communication that gets through to people.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a major thing. John, same question. How do you communicate your commitments to your stakeholders?
Sure. We communicate with our investors, and typically in quarterly newsletters or communications. We have an annual meeting. Ours happens to be this evening. Day
for you.
And then some ad hoc communication. We communicate with our partner institutions fairly constantly. And then we kind of pride ourselves on not communicating to them too much. A lot of international lenders ask an awful lot of them, and we understand they need our money, and then they need us to get out of the way because they need to develop new products. They need to work with their clients, and they don't need us on the horn to them all the time. And we found that that's been really, really appreciated, because we treat our partners in developing countries like the professionals that they are, and we're learning from them as much as they're learning from us. And not all international lenders take that egalitarian approach. And so this is a case in which the form of the communication is really important. And by being willing to listen, and also by being able to hear bad news without flipping out, we get all the news. And so we don't have the information risk that some of the other players in our field do, because people are willing to tell us when something has gone wrong. And we say, well, yeah, we understand that goes wrong. It's happened to others, and it turns out not to be a big deal. And they realize, oh my God, we can talk to these Americans and not get a lecture. Or we say, yeah, we had the same thing happen to us, and here's how we got out of it. And now, how did you do it? And so the form of the communication and how you say it is super, super important in our game. And we've been richly rewarded by having these close personal relationships with our partner institutions.
That's great. Thanks, John. Ben, same question to you. How do you communicate your commitments to your stakeholders, and do they ever push back?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say both Kate and John, both your answers resonated with me. Kate, you landed at the end there on the value of word of mouth. One of our 5 core values is the value of reputation. We really pride ourselves on having excellent customer service. We have, and we just know how important that is for word of mouth, and especially in some of the communities that we work within. So we are working within a utility sector, and utilities don't necessarily have the greatest reputation in a lot of communities, right? Let's face it, especially poor communities or Black and brown communities where those energy burdens are such an issue, as are disconnects and power outages, things of that nature. So as folks that come in dressed in garb, oftentimes our shirt doesn't say Walker Miller Energy Services. It says the name of the utility we're working for. But making sure, A, that we have an excellent reputation, allows us to get into communities, and starting with community leaders is definitely a way that we've been able to form trust, in addition to making sure our teams are reflective of the communities we serve, as I mentioned earlier. But just being respectful of sort of the natural hierarchy of things, and the hierarchy is not the greatest word there, but there are absolutely, some community leaders who are trusted, and if you can serve them in a way that's respectful, that goes a long way. Otherwise, you may get pushed back depending on where you start, and that reputation is hard to gain, easy to lose, as they say. And so, if you start off on the wrong foot, you're going to have a bad time. And then that also, I just wanted to tie it back to what you said, John, with the forms of communication. Making sure that you are, again, it just goes back to making sure that your teams are reflective of the communities they serve. I know I'm repeating myself here, but it is a pillar of the reason that we are successful as an organization. And it prevents us from getting too much of that pushback, and a little bit of a warmer reception.
Critically important. Absolutely. Okay. So last question, and then audience, I want you to be ready with questions for you. We do have a few minutes for Q&A. Emmanuel, if you could fast forward, thank you. Let's talk about challenges. What are some of the challenges you've faced in running a stakeholder-focused organization? Kate, I'm going to lead with you first, because you did mention that some days it's kind of challenging and hard, and I hear you. We've overextended ourselves as a company sometimes, and we've been frustrated by that, and we're like, all right, we've got to go back to the drawing board. So talk a little bit about what some of those challenges are in focusing on stakeholders and what you learned from it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even if you just look at the number of things to worry about, you start with shareholders. Great. One thing, make your decision based on a dollar, right? And then we're knowingly committing ourselves to saying that's not it. Like, we have to consider workers. We have to consider the environment. And that's just a stream of input, and it feels like a fire hose some days. And so, I mean, it's ultimately, it creates more work, which is valuable work. Ultimately, I think we are better for it when we take all of those into consideration. But yeah, I mean, challenging times in business like we've had, especially running a physical product company where we've got all the logistics and supply chain issues. We do have to make decisions, and some of those decisions you could define as trade-offs. Do we did have a meeting last year that said, what would it take for us to sell something in a plastic bottle, or would we just not sell products? Because if there are supply chain issues where we can't get our regular packaging, like, is that it? Do we not offer products for sale? So we've had those discussions. And so, what's the next best option? If it's not feasible, or if the original packaging that we wanted just became so expensive that we would lose money every time we sold something. And yeah, just trying to keep the perspective in mind of our customers, knowing that they trust us, that, if they're ordering product, that we are giving them the very best that we can possibly do within the bounds of physical space and time, and making those decisions the best we can. So that, like any business, money and time, those are the things that tend to run out quick, and trying to balance all of those inputs.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks very much. Ben, you mentioned already in some of the things you said about, being in the energy sector and its history and reputation, especially in Black and brown communities. Can you talk a little bit about, what challenges Walker Miller Energy has seen in taking a different approach to this stuff?
Yeah, I think we're at a period of monumental transition with respect to energy in general. And so it is a challenge, because we want to ensure that we're rebuilding the system in a way that is much more robust and inclusive than the way that it was built for the first time 150 years ago or so. And so that means access to technology, and it also means education. And there are certainly there's myriad challenges to that, because again, we're trying to reach everybody with this. We want to make sure that as a lower income community in Detroit, that you have access to electric vehicle chargers now, even if there may not be more than one electric car, if that, in your community. But we also know that if you do not have those chargers, those cars will not come, Field of Dreams style. And it's hard though, because the resources are frequently not there. The programs are set up more for market rate individuals, because that's what the cars are. This is just one example, but it extends beyond that to solar energy, to energy efficiency, to electrification of buildings. So really, it is challenging. There's so many resources out there, but how do we spend them in a way that really brings everybody along the first time around?
Absolutely. Thanks, Ben. John, same question to you. Any challenges that you can point to?
Yeah, we do have a few challenges. Just like any business, I think the obvious one would be the tension between having partner institutions to which we lend on one side and investors on the other. That's not as big a challenge as you might think. I mean, obviously we have to play that, and sometimes we don't place loans, sometimes we don't get investments, but that it's a challenge, but it's a tractable one. And we have we have wonderful investors. And so we do pretty well with that. The two challenges, and this is this kind of extends the stakeholder universe a little bit further, but we're a for-profit company in a sector that still has an awful lot of nonprofits in it. And so we're competing with larger organizations that get a lot of donated, or at least very, very cheap money. It's tough, but we're able to do it. And part of our mission is to engage the financial markets. Another major challenge for us is securities. The securities laws really favor large securities issuers and really hammer very small grassroots organizations, and we're a small grassroots organization, and that's made it tough. We've been able to do it, but that's made it tough. I want to address something that seems like it should be a challenge, and it's less of one than people might think. And that's, I talk to a lot of people and they say, how on earth do you get repaid by people in Zimbabwe and Kenya and Kyrgyzstan? And so, how do they repay you? That must be a challenge. No, it just isn't. We vet people really well. We vet organizations, but there are honest people all over the world, and we have very trusting relationships with people who we don't speak the same language. Everything has to go through Google Translate. We have very different cultures, but the basic, finding people in Africa and Central Asia and South Asia and Central America who share our level of honesty and who will repay is much less of a challenge than people would think. I really want to emphasize that the trust is out there, and we have wonderful trusting relationships all over the world.
Great. Thanks so much. And thanks to you all. We are right at time. If there's any burning questions from the audience, put them in the chat now. Otherwise, we're going to have to roll. I see Mary's there, and she's got her timer ready to go and ready to roll. So thank you, panelists, for all of your insights and for your thoughts and for agreeing to do this. Really appreciate it. Your businesses are inspirations, and you really do amazing work. I don't see any other questions in the Q&A, but feel free to reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm a governance nerd, so I'm happy to have this conversation and continue it further. With that note, I will send it back to Mary. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Tim. Tim and John and Kate and Ben for your powerful insights and practical actions to move us toward an economy that really works for all. I think people, when they think about stakeholders, they maybe have not had that broad perspective on what's more than shareholders. And the B impact assessment really helps us think more broadly to that.